Good afternoon and welcome to History and Systems of Psychology. I hope everyone had a really good weekend. We're going to do a couple of different things today. I've not yet opened the exam, so if you're looking for it online, it's not quite there. I feel like there are some more things that we need to cover, especially the introduction chapter that we didn't get to last week. So I want to cover that because you'll have information on the exam about that. And then we'll review a little bit more, finish up chapter 3, and move on to chapter 4. So lots and lots of things to do today. What I want to start with is let's number off, and we're going to get into, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Groups of 4. So if we can start off numbering here. Yeah. 2, you can say it loud. 3. 4. Eric, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's have 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. So 1's over here, all right? 2's in this vicinity, 3's in the back, and 4's over here. I need for each group to get out a piece of paper and put the names of the members of your group on it. And be in a position where you can converse.
This fine. Okay.
Yeah. What were you guys?
I don't know.
All right. So group 1, raise your hand. We're triads. Okay. Group 2, in the right place. Group 3. Okay. Okay. The 3 of you. Yeah. And group 4. I guess. Yes. You're in the right place. All right. You're gonna have to do this quietly. What I'm gonna do is, as part of the exam review, we're gonna do. We'll call it a game. All right. How does that sound? Sure. All right. So I'm going to say some, give you some statements, and then you're going to fill in the blank. But don't say it out loud. Write it on your paper. So you're going to have to converse quietly. Okay? All right. So are you ready? Let's do number 1. Okay. So quietly. Matter that covers the outer portion of the brain is known as. Okay, we're going to go quickly. Number 2, an early learning space for scholars developed by Aristotle is the blank. So this is without notes or anything, just your own knowledge in your brain. All right. The 4 humors are, this is number 3, melancholic, choleric, and I need 2 more. Melancholic, choleric, and 2 more. All right, number 4, lowest organisms possess this kind of soul. That should be an easy one. Okay. Number 5, the scientist linked to phrenology and the one linked to the abolishment, getting rid of phrenology, abolishing phrenology, let's say that, are blank and blank. So the one that is credited with coming up with the idea of phrenology as well as the one that abolished it. So we're looking for 2 names there. Shh, quietly. Okay. Okay. Are we good to go? Number 6. A reflex is composed of a blank and a blank. A reflex is composed of a blank and a blank. Okay. Number 7, region of the brain concerned with speech production. Blank area. That's a big hint. Probably have a 50-50 chance of being right, correct? Okay, are we on number 9? Does that sound right? 8? Okay. A type of soul possessed by animals like cats and rabbits. Okay, next one. In early Greece, another word for soul was this. Okay, next one. This philosopher is associated with the practice of asking questions, and then more questions, and then more questions. Okay, blank is credited with establishing the Indo-Arabic numeral system. Okay, Florence practiced blank on animals. Okay. And the last one, Zeitgeist is a German term that means blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's go through this, all right? So I may have gotten a tad off on my numbering, so if I didn't ask you a question, please let me know that. So the first one was that matter that encapsulates the outer portion of the brain. Did I ask you that one? Okay, what is that? Gray matter. Okay, say it confidently. Good. Let's see. Probably have to have glasses on for this. The early learning space for scholars developed by Aristotle. What'd you say over here? What did Plato establish? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Plato came before Aristotle.
I just heard you wrong, that's why I.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. I know that Aristotle sounds a lot like Plato. Okay. Plato Academy. Oh, here we go. Plato Academy. AA. Aristotle, I would say it has an L in it, but so does Plato. Lyceum. Okay. Are we good on that?
Yeah.
Okay, you will not forget that, will you? The four humors are melancholic, choleric, blank, and blank.
Blood and phlegm.
Phlegm is phlegmatic, all right, and blood is sanguine. Ah, okay. Okay, number 4, lowest organisms possess this kind of soul.
Vegetative or something. But
It is vegetative.
oh.
Yes,
It is?
exactly, yeah. It's like, stop there, vegetative. So we can think of ourselves as like couch potatoes if we're like scrolling through our phones or watching Netflix. We're in that vegetative state, right? All right, the scientists linked to phrenology and the one linked to abolishing phrenology, who are these people?
Gall is the phonologist.
Yes. And the non-phrenologist would be, anti-phrenologist would be?
Flock. Florence.
Yes, Florence, okay, all right.
Isn't it?
Okay, let's see, a reflex is composed of a blank and a blank. This one you needed to not overthink. A stimulus and reaction or stimulus and response. Got it? And I believe that is information we covered when we were talking about Descartes. Okay. Region of the brain concerned with speech production. Broca's area. All right, good. Comprehension would be what area? Very good, but with a W, right? Wernicke's with a W. All right, type of soul possessed by my dear cat Mirabelle and rabbits. Other cats and rabbits. What kind of soul is that?
I'd say sensitive, but since you said cat, I'm gonna say insensitive.
Oh, okay. All right. Mira, if you're watching. Sensitive soul. Okay. All right. Vegetative, sensitive, and then what are we? We hope, right? Yeah, very good. This should have been a gimme. In early Greece, another word for soul is what?
Psyche.
Excellent. Philosopher associated with asking question after question after question.
Always have to say it. Socrates.
Socrates, okay, yeah, if you watch Bill and Ted, is it Bill and Ted's
Yes.
Excellent Adventures?
Yeah.
All
I still
right,
say it in
all right.
that voice too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
The rest of us need to say Socrates, all right? But you spell it Socrates. All right, good. Did I ask you another word for hierarchy? Okay, what is that?
is it the taxonomy?
Mm-hmm. Taxonomy, okay. All right, doing pretty good. All right, let's see. Blank is credited with establishing the Indo-Arabic numeral system. Is that next or have I missed something?
That was next.
Okay, and who is that? Al-Kindi. Okay, good, very good. Florence practiced this on animals. Ablation. And what is ablation?
It's where you like cut back on certain parts of the brain.
Yeah, you cut back slowly, right? Layer by layer, not this way. All right, good. Ablation. And he learned a lot from that. All right, Zeitgeist is a German term used to describe what? We need to review the introduction chapter, don't we? Spirit of the times. I say blah, 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 blah. Spirit of the times. All right. How do you feel? Pretty good? Yeah. Better than you thought. I'll take it. A little true and false for you right now. These are not necessarily questions that will be on the exam, but some of them could be. Democritus proposed the humoral theory to explain health and illness. True or false? False, good. Aristotle came from a very privileged background. True or false?
False.
Okay, who came from a privileged background that came before him that's associated with the academy?
Plato.
Plato, good, all right, excellent. The pineal gland regulates the production of estrogen.
False.
Good job, what does it regulate? Melatonin, excellent. All right, let's, having learned a little bit from what we need to focus on more, let's look at the introduction chapter, okay? Because you'll have a few questions on the exam about how we study psychology. So you are welcome to return to your place of origin. And let's pull that up. Or not. See. Oops. Okay. All right, so reasons to study the history of psychology. This harkens back to day 1 and 2 of the class. There will be several questions on the exam about this, and I feel like it's been a while since we've gone over this material. Would you agree? Okay. One reason is to examine the data, experiments, methods, and theories that make up the field. And through studying the history of psychology, we're able to get a clearer understanding of how certain theories developed, ideas developed in response to specific problems that arose in different contexts, be that a medical context, political context, academic, social context, right? So we're able to see evolution of ideas as well. It's also important to study the history of psychology because it gives us a better understanding of how ideas that we think are really outdated, like let's take some of Freud's ideas that people go, I don't know how he could have said that about, women or X or Y or Z, but that they made a lot of sense given what was going on, where Freud was born, his influences, and things of that nature, okay? Also, it's important to be able to thoughtfully address and not dismiss ideas simply based on what we know now, all right? And we talked about what we consider to take for granted today may appear old and mistaken in the future. Can you give me an example? Is there anything, if you think back to like 10 years ago, that we believe that now people are like, pish posh? No. You don't hear people say pish posh a lot, but let's go back 50 years. Where does that take us? 1975?
Oh, like the internet.
Like the internet, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Kinda.
Okay, can you tell us more?
People probably back then, I don't know, I grew up with the internet, but people back then didn't think it would be anything bigger than now we can't live without it. So they probably thought it'd be like a fad.
We think we can't live without it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to function in society without it today, right? But at the time when that was being developed, thoughts were very different about it. Okay.
I remember like a math teacher like encouraging us to do math in our head because you're not always gonna have a calculator in your pocket.
Uh-huh,
And yet now, yeah, we do.
yes. And that leads me to something we're talking about as faculty. Is AI going to become the equivalent of a calculator? And to what extent, as faculty members, do we need to talk about AI, utilize it in the classroom? And you think about something like AI that wasn't around in its form that it is today, even 10 years ago. It's just grown by leaps and bounds, right? So it'll be interesting to see what kind of questions and how we're utilizing AI in 10 years, right? And Grammarly might look so yesterday very soon. We can also appreciate the reflexive reflexive nature of the field. We have the capacity for psychological theories to change the way we understand ourselves. We could look at an area of psychology such as motivation, and depending on the theory that you're examining motivation within, like expectancy value theory, we could look at goal orientation theory. We're going to have different ideas about what motivation means. Okay, remember that psychology has a long past but a short history. If I asked you to elaborate on that statement on the exam, what would you say? What does that mean? Maybe someone I haven't heard much from today.
It's constantly evolving or changing.
It's constantly evolving and changing. What else? Good start. The people we're talking about lived in BC, right? So a long, long time ago. The way I interpret that is that the roots of psychology date back lots and lots of years ago, right? But the record of psychology as the discipline that we look at today is very recent in the grand scheme of things. So Founders of Modern Psychology was written by G. Stanley Hall in 1912. G. Stanley Hall was someone who was a prolific writer in the area of psychology and education. And he was the person that coined the idea of adolescence, and that adolescence was a time of storm and stress. Prior to him coming on the scene, we didn't have a category called adolescence. It wasn't always there, right? So these are some early people who have left a legacy. Edward Boring, an unfortunate last name, but and then Robert Watson. And just as a reminder, a new division with APA that was devoted to the history of psychology didn't emerge until 1965. Okay. These words ring a bell? Look familiar to you? Okay. We talked on the first week of class about different ways of studying the past. Historiography, it's a way of writing about someone like Freud, or we talked about Steve Jobs. We may see a biography that's very celebratory, so it focuses on all the strengths and the accomplishments of an individual, or it could be more deficit-based or somewhere in between. Internalism versus externalism, you'll be needing to compare and contrast that on the exam. We had the example of humanistic psychology. If we look at it from an intellectual context, we may see it as a pushback from this idea of psychology being medicalized, right? Psychology is here to fix us. And so the pushback there was like, well, maybe we don't need to necessarily all be fixed, but we can live even better lives. So if you consider the emergence of humanistic psychology through that lens, that would be your interpretation, okay? Another way of interpreting how humanistic psychology came into being has to do with the social and cultural context, zeitgeist, right, that was going on. So this ability of certain individuals to live through World War II and, lots of atrocities that went with that and not only survive but flourish, played a role in turning psychologists to looking at, wow, we can also figure out, why do some people flourish when circumstances don't really warrant that? So the internalist and externalist view gives us different reasons for the existence of humanistic psychology. Questions on that? Okay. Great man approach, we know, is focusing on a great man or female, right? Criticisms is they neglect, stories like this neglect the colleagues who may have helped, as well as neglecting the influence of social and cultural systems. And then the zeitgeist, right? Spirit of the times, you'll remember that. Industrial organizational psychology. Lillian Gilbreth was pretty pioneering. This type of psychology developed in response to rapid industrialization of the U.S. All right, so what was going on in the U.S.? There was lots of growth there. And so we have development of industrial organizational psychology. Okay. Presentism, historicism, and sophisticated presentism recognize the differences between those, and that sophisticated presentism attempts to marry both of those approaches. Okay. You'll need to know about the origin myth process. That's focusing on all of these quote-unquote great accomplishments. One great accomplishment and then another great accomplishment over time. And we see that in our book, psychology is not presented in that manner, right? It also is showing like things that people thought were true that later someone comes along and abolishes that idea. Okay. All right, any questions on the introduction? Okay. So you feel good, ready for that. Okay, as a reminder, the exam is going to consist of multiple choice, short answer, fill in the blank, and essay questions. I believe I said to allow yourself at least 10 minutes to complete the essay question. I'll have that at the end. You have 1 hour to take the exam, so be ready, ready, ready. What would be, since you're taking this online, how might you prepare for this exam? I mean, we're preparing in class, right? You're not going to have time to look through all your notes. That's why some of this information that I quizzed you on earlier needs to be able to come quickly, right? Because it is time. But when you take an online exam, when are you most successful? What kinds of things do you do? Other than knowing the material, right?
I normally print off all the notes I've written and highlight like the most important facts so I can flip back to it easier.
Okay, so highlighting what you think is most important and helpful. Anything else? Anyone use flashcards? That might be good to do for some of the vocab, all right? These are just suggestions, but I did want to get your feedback on that. Okay, there's some information on John Locke, and I don't feel that we talked about him very much. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn to the book. We're in chapter 3, I believe. Are we chapter 3? Maybe chapter 2. If someone finds it before me, holler. In 2? Okay. It looks like page 74. Okay.
Will we also touch on Berkeley a bit too? Because I have them together in my notes, but I don't have much of anything.
Okay, yeah, you won't need to know anything for the exam about Berkeley, but you will need to know about Locke. So right now I want to focus on, try to pinpoint that as much as possible. Okay. So John Locke was born in England, right? His father was a lawyer. He attended a really prestigious school in London as a teenager called Westminster School. Again, like others were seeing this more frequently, he was not from a wealthy, prominent family. Although, you know, having a father as a lawyer during that time was still a pretty big thing. He won a prestigious scholarship to attend Oxford. Did he necessarily want to go into science when he got there? Any ideas? So he was interested in science, right? However, at Oxford, most of the curriculum was classical, restricted to classical and medieval text. It was the people that he was around, faculty members who were sort of practicing science on the side, right, that influenced him a lot. Some faculty members practiced and promoted the observational approach to science and medicine. For instance, on page 75, it says the physician Thomas Willis, remember we've studied Willis, studied the brain in unprecedented detail and made several fundamental anatomical discoveries. So Locke, although he earned a degree in classics, he learned a lot of doctoring skills, and I have that in quotes, from Willis. Okay. He also, during this time, met someone by the name of Robert Boyle. This was someone who was an eminent chemist and was known for this law, Boyle's Law. Alongside having these people in his life and around him at Oxford, he read a lot, right? He read a lot of work by Descartes and came away from that with this reinforced belief that we should take nothing for granted on mere authority. All right, so to question everything, right? He met Sir Anthony Ashley Cooper, and there's a story I believe I talked about, maybe I haven't, about how they came into meeting one another. So if you look on page 76, it has to do with a liver cyst, as so many things do. That was a bad joke. All right, no smiles, that's okay. So guys, need your attention. If you look on page 76, Lord Ashley visited Oxford. He was suffering from a liver cyst, and he was there to drink their medicinal water, all right? So the water was believed to have curative powers. The doctor who normally provided the water became ill, and Locke filled in for him. The rest was history. Ashley got to know Locke and said, hey, this is a person who's really intelligent, and though not formally trained as a physician, has a lot of great physician skills. He invited Locke to move with him to London and become his personal physician. All right, so that's a pretty good place to be in. The medicinal waters did not cure the liver cyst, however. All right. Luckily, Locke was very skilled, was able to look at this illness or the cyst from a different angle, as it were. And if you look in the book, what did he do to fix this? He used a surgical technique, right? And what did he do?
Silver drain.
He put in a silver drainage tube through an abdominal incision. And then being Sir Anthony Ashley Cooper, he had it replaced with a gold one, all right? After this, life-saving intervention, Locke became Cooper's political and medical advisor. So really interesting turn of events, right? A happenstance meeting at these medicinal waters led to him saving someone's life and becoming not only their physician, but also political advisor. Okay. You'll need to know about the essay concerning human understanding. This essay harkened back to Aristotle's idea of a tabula rasa. The mind is a receptacle for the outside world. The outside world writes on this blank slate, okay? And so we are receptors of information. We have sensations, which are the objects in the external world, and then reflections, what we do to understand those objects, okay? So he also talked about simple versus complex ideas, and you'll need to understand the difference. So if we think about an apple, what comes to mind? Think about an apple. What characteristics come to mind?
Red.
It's red, but though it could be. It could be green, all right. What else? Has a little stem at the top, okay.
Shiny.
Shiny, all right. Food, okay, represents food. Other things. What does it feel like in your hand?
It's smooth.
It's pretty smooth, good. It's kind of pokey at the bottom, right? Yeah, a little bit. Anything else about an apple? Normally round-ish. What does it have inside? Huh? It has the core, right, and little seeds, okay? Do any of you have an apple core that you can stick in? Yeah, that's fun, right? Surgically slice, not surgically, but slice that apple up into quadrants, right? Or eighths, I guess, if you have a really detailed core. Okay, so those are, I'm trying to think of how to word this best. Those are the characteristics that come in an apple, all right? And so that's a simple idea of an apple. However, our mind immediately puts our own experience on top of it. Does that sort of make sense? So we combine these simple ideas to form a complex idea about an apple, right? How it tastes, all of those things. So simple ideas are the essence, and complex ideas are taking those simple ideas and the way we perceive them. That makes up what we think of when we see an apple. I hope that makes sense. That's a really, really vacuum-packed statement about that. Okay. Our immediate perception, Locke referred to as being intuitive. And that makes sense, the word intuition, right? Our immediate perception of something. We also have demonstrative knowledge, which is when we use logical reasoning to arrive at a conclusion that is not obvious but definitely true. And everyone, I suggest that you study page 80. It's going to talk about these different types of knowledge before the exam. And then sensitive knowledge is created by patterns of sensory experiences people have. The term association of ideas, this is the final term we'll cover in reference to Locke, refers to linking together of ideas. And again, they use the example of an apple on this. So please take time to read that. the first and second paragraph on page 80, and I think you'll be in good shape concerning Locke. How's that sound? Great. All right. Well, we are through with chapters 1 through 3. Any final questions about the exam? Okay, we are going to now make our way into chapter 4. Okay, chapter 4, Sensing and Perceiving the Mind. Fun stuff. Was the camera on your faces? I don't know. All right. So, we now have David Hume. And if you look on page 136 of your book, you get a picture of David Hume. Looks like a stately individual with lots of curls, right? Wearing one of those wigs of the day. Hume lived from 1711 to 1776. We've not really talked about Scottish philosophers, but here we go with a Scottish philosopher. He questioned things, of course, like so many others. He questioned the logical status of causality. So there's this idea, remember, that harkens back to the days of early Greek philosophers, that certain events are caused by other events, right? And early philosophers believed that causality was rooted in what?
Will of the gods.
Yeah, the will of the gods, right? So things happen because of the gods. And so there's a logical explanation, or I guess it's not really a logical, but that's the explanation. End of story, right? Hume argued with this. He said, all we can ever really know is that certain sequences of events have occurred in the past, leading us to expect repetition in the future. You're in here at 1:42 on a Tuesday. All right? You cannot know for certainty that there'll be a class in here at 1:42 on Thursday. However, because this occurred in the past, we can be fairly certain that it will occur in the future, but not entirely certain. So his statement, "'Tis not therefore reason, which is the guide of life, but custom," is really important, and it encompasses his philosophy. Okay. All right. We are now ready to go do a deep dive into Hume. So please take notes on this. For the next exam, you will have questions related to the video. The video talks about Hume in much more detail than the book does, but I think this idea of identity is very important. It's very important within the realm of psychology, so we're going to spend some time watching this. Please take notes. We will get into groups and discuss after. And let's see. That didn't work, did it? Nope. That little brain looks like it just sort of fell onto the PowerPoint page. Okay. I'm going to try this. All right, before we do this, everyone, on a piece of paper, I'd like for you to write down something about your identity. Okay, so if I asked you to tell me who you are, how would you define yourself? Your personal identity. not a great one. All right, take one more minute. You could admire the beautiful calligraphy on the board. Okay, give me some words that describe you. Everyone with me? Some words that you wrote down.
Sister.
Sister, okay. Let's keep going. Aunt, all right.
Rational.
Rational. No sensitive being status for you. I like it, good. All right, other things. Be brave, throw something out. This is not enough for us to work with. Kind, I like it.
Hypocrite.
We should put
Did
hateful
someone
here.
say
Let's do hateful.
hateful?
Funny.
Funny, all right. Several of you, I could see that as part of your identity. I'd like to think that's part of my identity, but sometimes those jokes really don't land. And I don't know if something's funny just because you think it's funny. I think it needs to be funny for other people, but I digress. Other things. Fun, okay. Others.
Emotional.
Some of the phlegmaticness going on maybe at times. Others.
Determined.
Determined, okay. Keep going.
Said I was a
You said you were what?
reader. I don't know if
A reader, okay.
yeah, bookworm, same thing.
Bookworm, okay.
Loud.
Loud. 2 more. What did you put down?
I put that as a mom on there.
Mom, and I don't think I knew that, so that's awesome, all right. Brenda, what do you have?
I put nurturing.
Huh?
Nurturing.
Could see that. All right, so these are examples of what in terms of identity?
Like a role in your family.
Like a role that you play specifically in your family, right? Did anyone write anything down like student or employee? Okay, those are also roles, right? And fall into things that you do, all right? How about these items?
Just characteristics.
Okay, so more identity characteristics. This would fall into this in terms of it's a doing thing, right? Reading. Okay. So you get the idea. Now, to what extent do you think your personal identity, and let's think more these core traits in the center, stays the same throughout your lifespan? That's a major psychology question, right? Your core characteristics. Any thoughts on that?
I'd say they can definitely change. Like experiences change things for you, you know.
Experiences change things. How you look at things in life, I hope that as a college professor, I can open up your ideas to new ways of looking at something, right? Hopefully expand your view. I think that's this should be one of the goals of a liberal arts education. Okay. When we talk about psychology of personality, we talk about temperament, and that's something that's fairly consistent across the lifespan. And then we talk about personality development. And our personality is going to have aspects of our temperament. Depending on the theorists that you look to, they may say personality is pretty stable across the lifespan or more amenable to change. All right? All right, this is all information we need before we start looking at arguments against personal identity, all right? Please take notes.
Crash Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace, share your passion with the world.
In your day-to-day life, you probably assume a whole bunch of different identities. You might be a sister to your brother, a daughter to your parents, a colleague to your coworker, a mentor to the kids you teach. Or you might think of your identity as being based on your interests, your skills, or things like your gender or ethnicity. Whatever they are, I bet you think of your identities as being pretty fixed, stable, and you like them that way. And if that's the case, I'd like you to meet this guy, 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume. Because he says you're wrong. Hume argued that the idea of the self doesn't persist over time. He said there is no you that is the same person from birth to death. He said the concept of the self is just an illusion. This could be either liberating or terrifying, depending on how you look at it. I mean, if you don't have an identity, you don't have to worry about identity theft. But what does it mean for my understanding of myself and for the people I love if there is no single constant me? If that's the case, then the person I'm married to is literally not the person I fell in love with or made those vows to, which would suggest that I don't need to keep those vows, and neither does she. And what about personal responsibility? How can you hold someone accountable for their actions if they're not the same person now that they were before? And how can you be responsible for something that you did if you're always changing? This is gonna get dicey. If you joined me last time when we talked about personal identity, you'll remember that we considered two main possibilities for what might preserve you as the same person over time. One approach was the body theory, the sort of go-to view of things, which holds that you remain you over time because you just occupy the same body from birth to death. And the other was John Locke's memory theory, the view that your memories are what makes you the same person over time. I'm me because I remember being me in the past. But both of these models have some problems. No matter how much we want the idea of permanent, persistent selves to be a thing, David Hume said they just aren't. For him, it was really a no-brainer. If having a certain identity means possessing the same set of properties, he said, then how could anyone really maintain the same identity from one moment to the next? I clearly don't share all of the same properties of my childhood self or even of myself before I shaved today, so Hume would say that it's silly to pretend that I'm still me. But I feel like me, so what did Hume think was going on? Hume said the so-called self is just a bundle of impressions consisting of a zillion different things. My body, my mind, and my emotions, preferences, memories, even labels that are imposed on me by others. Think of a box and say it's marked Hank, and then put in that box everything that makes me who I am. My DNA, mannerisms, political leanings, my glasses, the relationships I have with others, the various roles I hold. Then you take away the box. Hume's point is, the self is just shorthand for all the junk in the box. And the fact that there is no box points out that there's no single underlying thing that holds it all together. And meanwhile, some of the stuff in the bundle goes away and new stuff shows up. So if you look at the bundle that is me now and compare it with the bundle that my mom and dad brought home from the hospital, they would be almost completely different. So Hume said we're all just ever-changing bundles of impressions that our minds are fooled into thinking of as constant because they're packaged in these fleshy receptacles that basically look the same from one day to the next. To explore this some more, let's bounce over to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy. Contemporary British philosopher Derek Parfit, probably after watching a Star Trek marathon, posed this thought experiment. Imagine a machine that breaks you down atom by atom, copies all of that information, and transmits it to Mars at the speed of light. Once that information information gets to Mars, another machine uses it to recreate you atom by atom, using copies of the same organic stuff that you were composed of here on Earth. The person who wakes up on Mars has all of the same memories and personality as you did, and that person thinks it's you. So here's the question. Is this space travel? Did you travel to Mars? Is the transported person really you? Or was a new being created that happened to correspond to you atom by atom, thought by thought? Now, consider this. What if a new version of the machine is created so that now, instead of destroying your body, it can simply be scanned and all of the information can be recreated on Mars, but the you here on Earth still exists? Now, did you travel or were you just replicated? If you're here on Earth, are you also on Mars? Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Thought Bubble, I think. Parfit agrees with Hume that there isn't such a thing as personal identity over time. So he says, in either case, you didn't travel through space. That's just a new you that shows up on Mars, whether the old you was destroyed or still exists. And you know what? Even if you hopped on a spaceship and flew to Mars the old-fashioned way, it'd still be a new you that arrives because you would have experienced all sorts of changes during the trip. But the thing is, Parfit thought Hume missed a really important point. Even though there isn't a singular you from birth to death, Parfit says that each of us has a psychological connectedness with ourselves over time. Think about your life as being like a piece of chainmail. The mesh that is your personal identity is made up of lots of separate chains, and those chains intersect at certain points to make up the chainmail. As you follow the timeline of one particular set of links, new links are being created that add to the chain. And as time passes, the links that are farther back in your past slowly start to drop off as they lose their psychological connection to you. So when you stopped loving Dora the Explorer, that link dropped away, and when you discovered that you totally love philosophy, a new link was created. But some chains intersect with that other chain and they have links that persist for a long time, like the love you have for your parents. So Parfit says that, sure, I'm not the same person I was when I was in elementary school, and I won't be the same person when I die. I'm not even really the same person I was when I started this sentence because every experience changes us, at least a little. But parts of me survive the passage of time because they're psychologically connected to my previous selves. And survival is what's important for Parfit. As long as enough of the elements of you persist, you see yourself as relevantly the same, but not for a whole lifetime. Parfit would say that none of the you that existed at birth is still around. Your physical matter is almost all different, and you have no memory of that time, and your preferences have completely changed. Baby you has not survived, but some of last year you probably has. And Parfit seems to have hit on an important insight here. Think about what you do when you catch up with an old friend. The first thing you do is ask what's happened since the last time you spoke. What you're doing, without really thinking about it, is recognizing that both of you have changed. If the changes are big enough, then your friend could seem like a stranger at first. So when it's someone you care about, you take the time to reacquaint yourself with this new person because you recognize the need to always know the most updated version of that person. But the opposite can also happen. Think about that aunt you only see at Christmas who still pinches your cheek and gives you a new American Girl doll every year. She probably knew what you loved when you were 10, but she doesn't know the current you, the version of you she's shopping for at Christmas doesn't exist anymore. But since you rarely see each other and you haven't made the effort to know the new yous, you're both looking past each other in that painfully awkward way that makes holidays with relatives so special. So now let's think back to the question we discussed earlier. If I'm not the same me over time, how do I make sense of promises, obligations, and responsibilities? Parfit's theory gives us an answer. Your degree of responsibility and obligation corresponds to your degree of connection to the person who made the promise or incurred the responsibility. So if you were a kindergarten bully who grew up to be a totally sweet guy who would never bully anyone, you don't need to feel any guilt. You're not that person anymore. You don't bear responsibility for that person's actions. Likewise, if you and your childhood bestie Pinky swore to be each other's maids of honor when you grew up, but now the two of you have nothing in common, you're off the hook for that promise. Now, about those marriage vows, well, a promise that lasts a lifetime doesn't really make sense in Parfit's view, and there are actually people using this line of reasoning who argue that marriage contracts should be temporary with the option of renewal. Kind of like a cell phone plan. But others have said that vows like this can actually stay relevant even after a lifetime of changes. Over the years, you and your spouse change and become different people, but these thinkers point out you may be constantly reaffirming the promises you made on your wedding day. So a wedding vow isn't a promise you made years ago when you were a completely different person. It's a promise you made this morning when you took out the trash and cleaned up the hairball the cat left on the rug. Why is it always on the rug? So clearly, we're not talking about Batman or science fiction or hypothetical trips to Mars anymore. We're talking about how philosophy can teach you about yourself and the people you care about, and how you can continue to know them and be close to them over time. Today, we continued our exploration of personal identity, learning about Hume's bundle theory and Parfit's theory of survival through psychological connectedness. Next time, we're going
All right, go ahead and reconvene in the groups I put you in at the beginning of class. And you can bring your things. You'll probably stay there for the last 15 minutes we have together. All right, your mission. Talk as a group is the idea behind David Hume's philosophy liberating or terrifying? That you're always a new you. Talk about old versus new you and the extent to which you feel you're still old you versus new you. I don't know of another way to put that, so that ties in together. I want you to explain the concept or talk about the psychological connectedness. They utilize this idea of links over time. Okay, so talk about that. And then thoughts on the degree of responsibility you have for things that happened in your past. Beyond that, any takeaways you'd like to share. So I'll give you about 3 minutes, quickly talk as a group, and then we'll discuss as a class. All right.
I guess, yeah, I'd lean towards liberating. I wouldn't say it's really.
I feel like
I know.
where it's like it's all stuff and we want the same. That's a big jump. It's like
I just need to
develop that.
it's not at the moment, it's just move on.
It's both, yeah.
So I think it's kind of liberating in that sense because like
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was like
kind of a lot to think about.
I would definitely say a lot different than
Thinking about different things. I think it's pretty. I can understand why they thought it was. I can see like what is it like is like I feel like the world is large and a much bigger place than it was back then.
Can you keep some of those links forever?
The big series.
Players and
like I've crossed every year or so, like I might forget something.
I mean, you forget
I
like
even
basic
realize
stuff.
then I stop like
Definitely still obviously did something wrong.
I thought the wedding vows were very interesting.
It's those, even the river that caused
Yeah, if you're with
Grand
someone
Canyon,
who's like you're gonna change as a person, you're gonna have to whatever, you'll be like, oh yeah, you have to
yeah,
learn
millions of
to
years
love
ago,
like them in each stage of life,
So
and you're gonna change your road together.
millions and millions of years, like, is it, it's not recognizable. If you've been seeing a picture of it
Something happened, they change like how they get divorced.
4 million years ago, you recognize it as the same river today. But
People would definitely have different views.
same river, it's the idea of
I'm thinking it's like, this is what my brain is.
Go to-
Like you kill
except for
somebody,
car.
like you wanna move past
If
it.
I replace
But
every
like
single,
you also
I think
did
that
it, so then you have like that.
philosopher used the ship, but if you replace every single.
All right,
piece of
30
ship,
seconds and counting.
How much do you have to replace before it's not the same ship? Where is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Just how much you want to yourself.
Okay, so each of you has a spokesperson. Remember, it doesn't always have to be the same person. It could vary, and I would love to see that. Which group would like to go first? Thank you. All right, what do you have for us? Share a couple of your thoughts. You can address one of these things or something different, Colby.
Okay. Well, we kind of went down the list. So we started with liberating and terrifying, which at first we kind of started with like, it's kind of terrifying to look at.
Sure, uh-huh.
But like, as we talked about it a little more, I feel like we kind of balanced it out with like, we're a little bit in between on
Mm-hmm.
whether it's liberating or terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not going to be the same person.
Good, okay. All right. How about one more point from this group?
That or something new.
How about something new?
I mean, this is just kind of a discussion for the class that I thought of. So it's like the past actions, if they're like your responsibility, if you're trying to bring something new. I mean, this is going to be a very like exaggerated thing, but it's like if you killed somebody, you want to like if it was an accident, like you're still going to think about those actions,
Right,
but you
right.
want to move on as a person. So it's like kind of like a moral, ethical debate. It's like forgiving
Sure.
it. Or if you did something like not Christmas, but like if you did something bad, are you gonna like forgive them and move on and believe that they're a new person, or are you gonna like hold on to that piece of them that's like they did me wrong or something?
Philosophical stuff. Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit more. I was thinking about degree of responsibility. Our world's changed a lot in just the past, like, since I've been born, which was a very long time ago now that I think about it. With this in mind, and this is a little bit opening up a box of worms, a book of worms, can of worms. Okay, a can of worms. There's an apple in there too, and a worm. We see people who are very prominent figures, be that like a celebrity. A celebrity could be like an actor, singer, or someone who's very famous. Influencer, and they did something in their past 30 or 40 years ago. To what extent are they responsible for that? Because a lot of people get raked over the coals when their past is uncovered, right? So thoughts on that? Ooh.
My friends and I argued this last night.
Did you? Okay.
I'm one of those people, I'll give people second chances, third chances, but it's also a very toxic thing for me. Like I've been hurt so many times because I give them so many chances.
Sure.
But they're all against giving a second chance. They're like, if you hurt me once, like, bye.
Wow, okay. So be sensitive to your group of friends. Like, cater to their every need and you're gonna be good. Other thoughts from other groups on this?
I'd say it's like what degree, like what they did, like how far did it go, and were they held responsible or accountable for their actions? Like were there repercussions?
Like at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like how was it handled? You know, like okay, they broke the law. Well, whatever. To what extent were they held responsible for it? And then like how did they respond to it? Did they grow from it, or are they still doing those same actions?
Okay. Anyone else? It's definitely something to think of. People's names can be ruined through that, right? And maybe sometimes that's what should happen, but not always, I don't think. Or holding someone to a standard for something today's standard, when the thing they did was 50 years ago, is, I don't know, that it gets really murky, doesn't it? Okay. Let's hear from another group.
So whenever we were talking about like old versus new you, like we agreed to the extent like you're not gonna be the same person you were 10 years ago in terms of like, especially considering most of us are younger, so we were like teenagers in high school or like younger kids. Like I know I'm very different from 14-year-old me versus now. Like there's different interests, different viewpoints that I've grown over the years. So I don't, in some areas I feel like I'm the same And like we as people usually will hold on to certain things, but for the most part, we do change everything basically about us. And kind of like with the psych connectedness, like the links that I was talking about.
Yes,
Like you will like gain new things and drop off some older ones, like you were saying, like the shows and stuff or interest you might have, like Dora the Explorer. Like you're not gonna hold on to that probably, but you might find a new show you like and then build on from that.
Yeah, good, very good. Guys, if I can have your attention for just a few more minutes, all right. And I do think all chains are not created the same, right? So some of those chains are big and thick, and others are like the paper. Have any of you made, like for the holidays, those paper chains are a little bit more like that, right? So those that are bigger and thicker may not exist in the future like they did in the past, but still be such a core component of who you are that they're still with you quite a bit. Good, okay. Back here, please.
We mainly talked about like the old versus new you.
Okay.
I mentioned how it's like, it feels more like I change like every year, you know? Like there's different aspects of me from like previous years and stuff like that. Or like I mentioned how I'd go through like my old life songs and I'd be like, I was really listening to
Right. That spoke to me. That was like, yeah, that's what my heart was feeling. Yeah, and now you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah, so that can change preferences like that. But at the time, that music really meant a lot to you, right? Okay. How about something you talked about outside of that? Just another takeaway.
I guess we talked about like the liberating versus terrifying.
Okay.
I wouldn't say like necessarily terrifying, but I think we're both more towards like the liberating side.
Okay.
But like, I guess there's like some points where it's like almost sad in a way, I guess is the word that I would use, because you realize like I'm not like the little kid anymore that like doesn't have any like major responsibilities.
Yes,
But, like,
that could be sad for sure. Yeah.
Instead, you know, I'm in the position that I am now. But yeah.
Yeah, good. All right, and our final group, right, or has everyone gone? You talked? Okay. Do we have any lingering thoughts from this?
Just an observation from
Sure,
older than most of, like, we're not supposed to be the same people that we were.
Yeah.
Like, it's not supposed to work like that. Like,
Okay, so I'll say that in just 1 second on that. But how many people expect us to be, or you feel expect us to be sometimes?
in good ways and in bad ways.
Okay, can you talk more about that?
So I think there's even a passage in the Bible where Jesus says, like, even a prophet's not recognized in his hometown. Like, there's this song, like, you're always 17 in your hometown. Like, if you go to people who knew you, in my case, 30 years ago, I'm still gonna be that 17-year-old. Like, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We
I
do
think-
change and we're supposed to.
Yeah, and I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as well. Like, we're our own biggest enemy, and so that can also be really debilitating when you're trying to grow. But you still want to stick to like old habits and stuff.
Sure.
Like you're your biggest enemy and biggest critique, so that can.
Yeah. And when we talk about psychology, I mean, it can be scary, but beyond that, we have neural pathways that have been carved, right? So when we're trying to form think about something different, or maybe even something like become a morning person or become more positive, it can be scary and it can be really hard to do on very different levels, but some of that is a rewiring thing, which we'll talk about later, habit and how that relates. So philosophy is still relevant today. All right, and hopefully this gives you some food for thought. I wish you well on the exam, and I will see you, well, probably on Thursday, right?